What's going on, everyone? The Third DB here. Today for you I have a Puma custom that's off-white inspired. So without further ado, let's just get into it. Alright, the first thing I started out with here is just a couple stencils. I actually ended up using only the negative space stencils and just painted it on because it worked out better, so I'll show you how I laid those down. I just started out with a little bit of tape around the edges to keep it in place and made sure all of the center points were in there. And the part that I laid it down on the upper was kind of textured, so I didn't show it here, but I actually went over it later with a wet t-shirt and an iron to stick it down a little bit further. And then I just repeated the same technique on the outsole. There was a raised section in the center of it, so I just made sure that the Ecolite was perfectly centered, and then repeated the same technique with the wet t-shirt just to stick it down a little bit better, and then painted it over. So we'll get into that now. My first tip for this would definitely be to use a nice brush. I picked these up at Michael's, and they were pretty good, but also using the right kind of paint really helps. I used like a craft paint, and it just didn't lay down correctly. Using like a leather or fabric paint probably would have worked a lot better. Something that was actually meant for this kind of like taped off work. Because as soon as I tried to peel it up, as I was letting it dry, I let it dry for about 10 minutes, and I tried to peel it up, and it pretty much just peeled it all up, so I had to restart. So like I said, using like a leather and fabric paint would definitely be best for this. It would make it a lot easier. In total though, I put on about 4 coats just to get nice solid even coverage of the black over the white so it wouldn't look weird. And so I only let it dry for about 2 to 3 minutes after I put on the final coat. And here you can see me peeling it off, and even with only giving it that little amount of time to dry, it all kind of just like ran and it just didn't come out correctly, which it would have if I had used like a better paint for this. It would have just laid down more evenly and not been so raised, I think. But here you can see me completely peeling it out and like showing off like just how kind of poorly it came out. I did have to go back in with a detail brush, which I think I do have some video of, which I'll put in now, of me going back and fixing it, just squaring everything off, adding in the quotation marks where they weren't there, and just making it look actually like Helvetica should. And it turned out pretty well. From afar, like if you were standing up and looking down at them, you couldn't even tell at all that it was like not very well done, per se. And I think that turned out pretty well, so we'll move on to the upper, which was actually definitely the hardest part of this whole thing. And really the only hard thing about it is just the material that upper is made out of, that weird textured nylon almost. I didn't leave in too much of the painting because basically all the steps are the exact same. This one took a little bit more work with the iron just to try and get it laid down, but as you can see, it's still just really didn't stick down very well, and there was a lot of bleed through. So this one took a lot more touch-up work. I ended up basically outlining every single letter with a black Sharpie. I also didn't put down as many coats of the white for this because it was really just saturating underneath this stencil and kind of just pushing it around as I was painting. So I only ended up putting about 3 coats on this, which is why it's not as white and almost gray in some places, because it's obviously not laid down as thick in those areas. And here I just grabbed some before and after shots of the outlining of the words on the upper. So you can see the one on the left, obviously, you can read it a lot better. The one on the right, the paint didn't lay down as well. So just doing the outlining definitely helped that as well. And you can really see here what it actually says on it. Off-white for Puma, Archive Mid-Light. I basically just copied exactly what they did for any of the Nike shoes, off-white for Nike, whatever the name of the shoe is. This one happened to be the Archive Mid-Light. And then instead of Beavertown, Oregon, obviously I put Bavaria, Germany, because that's where the company's from. And then the year that the shoe was released is when the copyright's for. Then here is a close-up of the detail work that I did on the midsole part of it. So you can see after I cleaned it up with a little bit of isopropyl alcohol to get some of the bleed through, and then also went in and squared it off with the detail brush, it definitely just makes it look a lot better. Now we're just getting into the finishing details. Here we have the little tag that goes on the side of the shoe. I just used a little piece of like cereal box wrapped in fabric and just went with the green because that was the kind of fabric that I had laying around, so I just used that. And to attach it, I just kind of eyeballed it where I wanted to go, slapped some hot glue on it, and stuck it on there. But here's when we get into my favorite part of the entire custom, which is cutting out the interior swoosh and just letting it hang, kind of giving it that deconstructed feel like an actual off-white would have. But of course, this is when my camera decides to die and I don't notice, so I didn't film any of it. But basically what I did was just take a seam ripper and a razor and some tweezers, cut all of the stitching, which was actually kind of a pain because there's 4 layers of stitching in that swoosh, all along the inside, and left it attached at the heel and at the sole, and then I cut it down the middle as well, so it hung in 2 pieces. I'll show the B-roll here. You can see kind of how it lays instead of just it hanging off and still being attached in the center. I felt that it looked better when I cut it down the middle. Then I just repeated that on both sides, but yeah, that was my favorite part. I wasn't sure exactly how it was going to turn out, and I thought, if anything, I would have just cut them off if it didn't look right, and then left like the stitch holes and the center, the upper part being exposed there and really giving it that deconstructed look. But it turned out exactly how I wanted, so I was happy with that. And here you can see the final steps, which is just throwing this hang tag in. One of my buddies actually got this on a shirt that he bought off eBay that was a fake off-white shirt, so I just grabbed that from him and threw it on there. And then it really just completed the whole thing. You know, you need that hang tag. I was going to order one off Amazon, just like a generic red one, or take one off of an old fire extinguisher or something. But he had that, so I just grabbed that. It said off-white on it. Worked perfectly. But yeah, that's it for the custom. I think it turned out pretty well. It matched my costume pretty well because I actually made it for a Halloween costume. And I just made a whole bunch of hype beast gear. I made like a Supreme shirt, some Bape joggers. It really completed the whole look, and I think it turned out pretty well. So if you did, go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe. I got a couple other videos in the works. If you have any ideas that you want to see me try and make, go ahead and leave those in the comments. And be sure to follow me on Instagram. Other than that, have an amazing day.